Podcast, Unleash Your Potential, Make Your Impact. On the show, we talk with leaders in their industry about leadership challenges and strategies, sometimes around the hiring process. And we also hear from successful professionals who are doing what they love and making their impact. I'm Amy Miller, and joining us on the show today is Pat Hasler, sales professional, coach, and trainer and mentor. Pat, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Amy. I'm excited to be here and excited to impact more people. So this is great.
I love that. Yes, that is great. You said something very profound, very simple, but very profound, which I find that the best advice often is. But in one of our earlier conversations, you shared that success is about hustle and follow up. So that sounds so simple. I'd love, but not easy. It sounds easy, probably, but it's probably not. But I'd love to hear what that means to you, hustle and follow up, and how that focus on hustle and follow up applies to and leads to your success.
Yeah, I think a lot of times, no matter what your endeavor, and they're kind of in two different directions, to be honest. So a lot of times you'll find someone is really strong in the hustle part, or they're really strong in the follow-up part. So real quick on both, hustle, I always look at that as that going the extra mile theory, right? So when people are doing whatever they do, whatever their profession is, whatever their career is, they're very very passionate about moving forward and succeeding and helping more people. It could be a number of different things. Could be producing, but that extra mile, in my industry and in sales right now, that's making the extra call. It's like making the extra stop, the extra visit. It's going the extra mile in terms of just finding out what you can do the little bit extra. I was always taught by a couple mentors in my life that, winners sometimes will go 100% and then just a little bit more. And that's what I look at as hustle. You don't really have to tell those people to work harder. Most of the time you have to kind of walk them back a little bit. As far as the follow-up goes, I think that also applies to a lot of different things and a lot of different areas where, if you look at relationship building, I think that's the biggest piece where in relationships, you have to look at the other person and what they need. And following up a lot of times just means you're available. You're available to them. You're in it for them. And you're really good at not just developing relationships, but making it more about the person you're serving and more about the people you're leading than it is about yourself. And I found that in multiple areas in my life. I've got, kind of a diverse background, as you know. And I think the more you can make it about the people you're serving, the people that you work with, the better the relationship will be. And so follow-up to me is just continuing to build that relationship and continuing to work with people moving forward.
That is excellent advice. And I love how you broke that down. So hustle is going that extra mile, and then follow up is putting others, well, not necessarily putting others first, but putting yourself in the shoes of others, of your potential customers and clients, and what it is that they need and how you can fill that need. Is there a dominant mindset that's on the underlying core, or foundation of having that drive to go the extra mile, go the extra step, do just a little bit more, and really care about your customers and thinking about their needs?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of times, so you can see this in different areas, maybe more often than others. And I know a lot of times when I've been in the process, and I know my background's in education, training, sales, kind of leadership management, kind of a smorgasbord of things, if you will. But in those areas,
I'm excited to get into that too. Go ahead.
but it's fun. It's funny because your question's perfect, because in those areas, you'll find people that have a background where they want more out of themselves, so they don't settle, right? So in my background, I've got an athletic background. I played baseball all the way through college. Even had, some tryouts and whatnot. But a lot of times, like, it wasn't necessarily just being the most talented person, because I don't think I ever found myself in that position where I was the most talented, and probably in anything I've ever done. But I knew I could hang with people with work ethic, and I could push
Mhm.
further. And I've had good parenting and good coaching and good mentors in my life that always encouraged me to use my work ethic and my attitude to compete and to continue to move forward. Now, how you interweave that with others is you realize that the goals aren't just about you. I have 3 daughters, and we talk about it all the time. And a lot of it is, guys, you want to be the best you can be to bless other people. You were created, for a reason, and you not just for yourself and your own goals, and that's going to motivate people. But it's such a blessing for you to be able to help other people with the excellence you can create. And a lot of it literally is just going the extra mile and working hard.
Yeah, the work ethic comes back to or leads into another topic that I wanted to talk with you about and get your take on. And it also speaks to what you just shared, which is responsibility.
Yeah.
I believe that, and I'm sure you do as well, we each have our own unique talents and gifts, and it starts with identifying what that is for each individual. Starts with paying attention to what excites you, what interests you, what do you feel like doing, what makes you curious.
Mhm.
But I think where a lot of times people get stuck in their career or in a certain area in life is when they're not choosing to listen to that and to pursue that direction.
Mhm.
And it's, if not always, almost always out of fear, what if it doesn't work out? But I believe that it's our responsibility to pursue that path, to get curious about, to take the first step to further explore what it is that drives us, that interests us, because it's whatever it is drawing our interest for a reason. And that's how going in that direction, that of what drives us, is ultimately what's going to help us to make a greater impact. And ultimately, that's how we're going to impact others. That's how we're going to help others. And so I feel like that's our responsibility. And when we take that responsibility, even though it's challenging, and we are honest with ourselves about what it is we really want, and we start to explore, um, that's what leads to greater happiness, because we're working toward fulfilling our purpose, and we're having a positive impact on others, which helps us to feel connected. And you mentioned you have 3 daughters, and you also have a wife, and you've had a great career, which I want to talk about how you earlier on in your career and how you made that transition. But what does responsibility mean to you, and how has that impacted your role in sales, in sales leadership, as a coach, a teacher, a mentor, and a husband and a father? It was a really long question. Thanks for letting me get all that out. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on responsibility and how it's played a role in different areas in your life.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. And there's a book, and I'm trying to remember the author, and I actually have it over here, so I have to come back to it. It's called Now Discover Your Strengths. It's a fantastic book. I'm sure you've probably read it, because I'm hearing some of that even in the question. Maybe
I
we'll
haven't
have
read
to.
it. Now discover your
Okay.
strengths. Okay, I'll
Now,
I'll check it out.
if I and I will, I'll do a follow up. I'll do a follow up with you with the author.
There you go.
I can't think of the author's name right now. I may
Okay,
reference a
great.
couple books today, so just bear with me on that. But that's a great book, and you
Sure.
reminded me of that book, because a lot of times what people and it goes really back to what we were talking about before, like whatever you're passionate about, whatever you're drawn to. I love how you put that. It's kind of been put in your heart for a reason, right? And
Yes.
we're given talents, skills, abilities, and desires and things we want. And you're almost, if you don't pursue those, right? If you're not pursuing your talents and abilities, what ends up happening is you're not being responsible for the blessing that you could create for other people. You're not being responsible
Yes.
for how that can help others, and not just some of these are really obvious, right? Like if you're coaching someone, if you're mentoring somebody, if you're leading somebody, you would hope those are really obvious situations where if you're not doing your job, if you're not holding up your end of the bargain, that's a problem. But I think no matter what your role is, no matter what you're doing, you can impact other people. You brought up my being a dad and a husband, and in our house we have, so there's four ladies in my life, not including we have two lady dogs too, but not including them. Yeah,
How
it's all
funny.
ladies and me. Yeah. but
Nice.
um but, but they're all very different. Like they all are very different personalities. And the way they even approach their world is different. And then the people I've taught or coached or worked with, or even managed in the sales career, people are different. They have different motivations. They have different goals. That part doesn't matter. Like whatever they do, whatever their purpose is, and there's a big one with purpose. Their responsibility is to pursue that the best they can, because I don't I don't think you're given gifts. I don't think you're given talents on accident, right? So they're there, and you're given dreams, or you pursuing a dream or a goal. It's your responsibility to do it, not just for yourself. Once again, I'm going to say this: there's great books written on servant leadership. But
Hmm.
no matter what your role, you can be a leader from anywhere. Um, Other people are watching. Other people are watching, and I think you have a responsibility to pursue things and pursue excellence, because somebody else, whether you realize it or not, somebody else is watching, and they may draw upon you for strength and inspiration. So for that reason alone, whether you're leading them directly or not, I think you're
Hmm.
responsible to do the best you can, just because other people and their future are at stake.
I love that. Absolutely. And it's also leading by example. I mean, that's a way
Mhm.
to lead by example, because we can't offer help where it's not being received. We can't give where
Mhm.
somebody doesn't want to take. We can't, you can lead a horse to water, but not make them drink, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But what can we do? We have control only over ourselves, but that can make a big ripple effect, make a big splash, make a big wave, just by being you, being your best self, giving your best, because as you say, other people are watching, and somebody out there,
Mhm.
you might need your inspiration.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think a lot of times, if that's enough to get somebody up on a Monday morning, if that's enough to get people to push a little harder, awesome. Because
Hmm.
I think there's been points in my life where I can look back and I say, you know what? Probably the biggest reason I was doing what I need to is I knew people were watching, and I couldn't be a bad example for somebody else. And that's powerful, right? That's somebody taught
Hmm.
me that. This isn't like I've copied and stolen all of this. It's all plagiarized, right? So none of this
we
is, yeah, it's just all
We
good
learn it,
stuff.
live
So I
it,
love it.
give it. Sorry, I just plagiarized
Yep.
that from a speaker. What's his name? Master
Hmm.
Shri Akashna. He's got a lot of videos on law of attraction and things like that on YouTube. But we
Yep.
learn it, we live it, and then we give it. So I just stole his saying, but go ahead.
No, that's it. I mean, it is. It's we're in a position where the more I was listening to an athlete speak recently, and they were talking about why they were such an open book, even to the athletes that were coming behind them to push them and possibly take their job. And he was explaining why it was still his responsibility to let them know everything that he knew about that sport,
Wow.
that position, because even though that player was going to take their job, that's just how a team works. That's just how you succeed. And he took it further. And I think you and I know this, the next level, where there's more at stake here, right? There's more. I think if people aren't giving, um, they're missing out on a big part of life, and the fulfillment that you can get and what you can get back from giving is phenomenal. And I really think that if people looked at it more about how can I give back and how can I help somebody else, I think they'd not only be more fulfilled, not only be more successful, because that's what a lot of people want to know. How do I be more successful? I do
Hmm.
believe that there's a whole thing and giving and you give first, then you receive. But let's put all that to the side. I think they'll be happier. I think they'll be a happier person. They won't worry about their problems so much. They won't be discouraged, which, by the way, impacts your success level, right? If you're not happy,
Right.
if you're not motivated, if you're not
Yeah.
excited about, whatever's going on in your life, you're not going to be successful. So it's a perfect circle, right? So if you're
Hmm.
giving, you're going to feel better about what you're doing. You're going to impact other people. And I really believe you're going to be happier because you're not going to be focusing on, maybe there are negative things in your life, but you're so worried about other people that you don't even
Hmm.
see it. You don't even worry about it.
Yeah. And that makes me think of something that I often like to talk about, which is, well, it's an abundance mindset. I believe that there's enough
Oh,
success to go around for everyone. So with that mindset, I mean, the other opposite mindset is, let me keep all these secrets to myself so that I
mhm.
succeed faster. Well, that's a fear-based mindset that's definitely going to hold you back. But not only that, I think a big thing that we're all looking for is connection. And when we're not wanting to help out those around us and share the knowledge that we've learned, uh, that just is, we feel disconnected, and
Mhm.
so then we don't feel happy because connection is something that we're all looking for. You had a very successful career transition. I want to come back to this and touch on this because you started your career in education as a teacher and a coach. You coached football, baseball, basketball. Did I get that right?
Correct. Yep.
Right. Okay. And then later in life, you decided you wanted to transition to sales, and not just sales, but medical sales, which is a super challenging field. And I think a lot of times later in life, people want to change their career, but maybe they decide
Mm.
not to try, not to accept the responsibility for the direction that's calling them, because it's hard. What if it doesn't work out? And you were successful not only in sales, but also in sales leadership, building and leading teams. I'd love to hear what made you first decide to make that transition, and how did you do it?
And it's funny because and even the way you asked the question, I think we're on the same page because a lot of times it's the decision, right? So from my perspective, so I can kind of give you the rundown from my perspective, and it'll probably answer both parts of this. Number one, I really feel blessed to have had two wonderful careers in two totally different industries, if you will. In
Hmm.
education, I really felt I was drawn to that. I absolutely zero regrets in pursuing that. At 16 years, 16 wonderful years in education. I taught at the high school level. I taught a lot, mostly seniors, actually. I did some writing. I published during that time. I had I
Awesome.
coached I coached, like you talked about, football, basketball, baseball. That my friend, I was smiling because my friends would say, like, whatever sport they come up with, Pat, you'll end up coaching, because they kind of found a sucker in me to a certain extent. But no, I loved it. I
That's
loved
so
every
fun, though.
moment of
That
it.
could must have been so
Yeah,
rewarding. All those kids that you get to work with and help, and then you're going to be
incredibly.
happy in what you're doing, and that's going to spill over into other areas of your life. Go ahead.
Hmm. No, no, you're right, and it's exactly right. And it was incredibly rewarding. I really had no intention of leaving education for most of my career. It was really just going to be, okay, how can I be more effective? I got into some college course development and really was starting to do some different programs. I had some different goals to go in that direction, continue with writing. And honestly, I've always, like, a lot of high school teachers who are trying to raise families, you've got to do some things on the side, right, to financially make ends meet and do
Hmm.
what you need to do for your family. And so I'd always done sales on the side. And actually, when
Okay.
I had an interesting undergraduate. I'd started when I went to college and accepted a scholarship to play baseball. And I had 18 years old. I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I started in business, and then I kind of went into education. And then it's funny, as I went through my education career and I was doing things on the side, I really started falling in love with sales and business. And I had my own business, and we did online sales. And my wife and I pursued some things. And so I always did it on the side, like while I was teaching coaching, because, I didn't like to sleep much, apparently. And then,
Yeah, it sounds like maybe
and
you didn't.
yeah, what it did was it opened my eyes, and it kind of broadened my horizons to other possibilities. Quick story is I made a transition into education leadership, into more of the administrative side. Um, I started seeing some things I didn't really want to pursue anymore administratively.
Hmm.
The teaching and coaching, it was different than administration side. And then I had these just new pursuit goals in sales. And I'd always said, and this is going to go right into the next one. I always said, if an opportunity came that was really good, and it was involving something that I could really sink my teeth in and pursue, and offered challenges and offered some different choices, I would take it seriously. And I ended up having to put my money where my mouth was.
Hmm.
And so I had a friend who had just basically suggested that I start applying to some sales companies. I did so. I was made an offer, and I was at a point where I needed to make a decision. Was I going to pursue educational leadership and administration, or was I going to switch into sales and business? And I pursued the latter. To kind of follow up on that, you're exactly right. The biggest decisions were not really between education and sales. The biggest decisions were based in risk and doing something new and doing something
Hmm.
to be quite honest, I'd never done before. And so that kind of going out of your comfort zone, that was the biggest thing that had to happen. So what I kind of leaned on was a lot of good mentors and people that were giving me advice, and they saw things in me that I could pursue and be successful somewhere else in another arena.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
they could see I had some passion in doing something else. And so they encouraged me, and they basically, and I always heard this: if you're not willing to take a risk, you're not
Yeah.
going to succeed at the highest level. I
Yeah.
always heard that. You've got to, at some point in your life, you're going to have to take a risk, and sometimes multiple risks. But if you play it
Hmm.
safe all the time and you never leave your comfort zone, you're never going to probably reach your full potential. And I don't know if everybody agrees with that, but I fully believe that you have to take
Yeah.
risks in life. And that's what I did. And I kind of jumped in with both feet. And that's a whole another story on the sales side.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's why the transition really happened. And that's what it was kind of all about for me.
Yeah. Taking risks is absolutely key if you want any kind of change, because otherwise we're just
Mhm.
staying with when we're staying with what we know, we're comfortable, and there's no possibility for change. And I think that,
Mhm.
if somebody out there who's listening is a person who is kind of averse to risk, you could start small and just
Mhm.
build that habit of trying something new, because anything new, going to try a new workout class at a studio that we've never been to, that's going to make us a little bit nervous because we don't know what to expect. But when I like to say, when you change your perspective, you change your life, because when you look at something differently, you're going to see something different. And so I encourage people to shift their perspective around the unknown to and having fear around the unknown to possibility.
Absolutely.
When you can make yourself try something new, you're definitely going to experience new things. So yeah, the only way to have greater success, and um, success just means happiness, whatever that means to you personally, you're going to have to try something different. And this sounds to me like this is likely a habit that you probably had instilled
Yeah.
for many years, probably from a young age, taking risks, taking a chance. So then you were able to you were all of those kind of smaller, risky steps in your younger years led you to be prepared and ready to take that bigger risk. And then you likely already had the mindset in place that your choices dictate your actions. You mentioned attitude earlier when talking about succeeding and in sales, and in sports, it's about attitude, because our attitude around something, first, whether or not we can achieve something, that's going to dictate our actions. So yeah, risk is important if you want to change your life, if you want to get to that next level, even just on a smaller scale. But you can start on a smaller scale. It doesn't have to be so scary, and you can also think about it a little bit differently. The unknown as a possibility.
Mhm. Absolutely. No, and I think if people get anything, just that, and I like how you said that, like, just, it could be little things. It can be a new gym, a new workout. It can be, you know what, I'm going to fix this part of my life, and I'm going to go after it with knowing you may fail,
Hmm.
and it's okay. And I think that's the part that holds people. People are literally paralyzed by fear. They're
Hmm.
paralyzed by fear because where they're at's comfortable. It's like some people are just comfortable being uncomfortable. They don't like
Oh
their
yeah,
job.
because they
They don't
know
like, yeah,
what that
yeah.
discomfort, but then they're never going to get out of that discomfort because
Mhm.
there's no way to know what else is out there until you make a different move. What do you think is something that the world needs more of?
I think a lot of times, and I was thinking about this in terms of what's always helped me, right? So I think a lot of times people giving back, right? People helping other people, kind of paying it forward type of thing. I mean, we're all inspired when we see on the news, or it was like, and I don't know if you've ever seen these, but they seem to happen in and I'm in the Western Pennsylvania region, the suburbs of Pittsburgh, and they, every once in a while, and it doesn't happen all the time, but every once in a while there'll be a run at Starbucks, right, where the person pays for the person behind them, and then they keep it going for like a couple hours, and
Oh
it's
my
like,
gosh,
yeah,
that's
it's
so
pretty
nice.
inspiring. Yeah, it's super cool,
I've
and it's
never
like,
seen that happen. I wonder if that's happened in
yeah.
New York. I guess I could start it and
I
see what
don't.
happens.
I'm not sure about New York, but and nowadays, and funny enough, nowadays I don't know if people could afford it with how much coffee costs now. So,
Starbucks is
but
expensive.
yeah,
Yeah, I've been
oh
working
yeah,
from home for a while, but when I was in sales, I was always out, at stopping into Starbucks, getting coffee for customers or for myself. And now if I go, I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Five
no, I
dollars for
mean,
black coffee. But yeah, no,
it's
that's really
funny.
cool.
Yeah, but I
You
think
mentioned, I want
that's
to
what they
circle.
need. Go ahead,
Go
go ahead.
ahead.
No, I'm sorry. No,
Oh
I was
no,
just going
no.
to
Let
say,
me
I
let
was
you
going to finish
finish.
that
Yeah.
thought. It was essentially with paying it forward. I think a lot of times people don't realize it is simple stuff, right? It's
Yep.
like holding the door for somebody. It's smiling, right?
Hmm.
There's something I read once. It said the whole world is waiting for the other person to smile, right?
Oh
And
my
so
gosh, that makes me want to
if
cry.
yeah,
That's really special.
and if you want to lead, sometimes you don't have to be this outgoing extrovert, like screaming
Hmm.
at the top of your lung. No, sometimes you just have to be the person who does something first, and it could be simple stuff. And
Hmm.
I've always learned that, like, it could be, just smiling at somebody, or asking them how they're doing, or and it
Yeah.
could be like that person. It was like the first time someone smiled at them that week. It could be the first person
Yeah.
who ever asked them how they were doing. And I think
Hmm.
the more we do things like that, I think the world definitely needs more of that.
That is a great idea to take a risk. Take a risk at being the first one to smile because you don't know if they're going to smile back. Even, just something as little as that. You take that risk and then you build up your confidence and then you're more confident for the next thing. And those bigger challenges, those bigger goals that are challenging that we're working toward, we have to work our way up to get there. We have to go through
Mhm.
these challenging experiences to ultimately equip ourselves to offer our greatest impact. And so these little risks along the way, just doing something where we don't know what the outcome is going to be, as simple or seemingly small as smiling at somebody first, is a good place to start. I want to circle back to, you mentioned failure, and
Mm.
also want to tie that into something that you mentioned along your career track. So you were doing great in education and in coaching, and then of course you're a hustler, so you wanted to go that next step. So then you were looking at getting some experience in administration. Sometimes we go one direction to learn that that's not the direction that we want to be, but that draw is equipping us, or going that direction. If something happens where it gets our attention and leads
Mhm.
us to the right direction. So, some people would call that a failure. Well, I tried this and it didn't work out. But no, oftentimes we need to get started. We need to take the extra step that we're curious about, go in that direction so that we can discover the path that's meant for us. So I don't really believe in failure for that reason. Then another example is we're getting more equipped. We're learning how to be, you mentioned referencing books, but Smarter, Faster, Better, Charles Duhigg's book. That's a great business book. What's your take on failure?
Yeah, I mean, and you have John Maxwell failing forward, and it's the same
Hmm.
idea. And I 100% agree with you. I think a lot of times, um, people, if, and you use the example when I went into administration, and we actually, it wasn't that it was the wrong pursuit. It was probably the wrong pursuit for me. We did some great things, and I was proud of what we did there in administration. And but you're right, and I was smiling because you hit the nail on the head again. Because had I not gone into administration, I may not have transitioned. And I'll tell people it probably wouldn't have
Hmm.
happened. I don't know that I would have left the classroom directly to go into sales. So I had actually had the year out of the classroom going into administration and pursuing that prior to a transition into a different industry in sales. So you're right. I honestly think that happened for a reason. It wasn't that it was even unsuccessful. We did some great things for kiddos and for our
Hmm.
programming. But I saw areas that I was like, this isn't really what I want to do, and long term, and it's not what I want to pursue. But it allowed me to take that next step. And I think a lot of
Right.
times, go back to what we were talking about, anything you're doing, like it's like working out, right? So if people think you can succeed without failing, then they're probably not getting stronger. It's like going to the weight room and you continue to lift the same exercise, the same weight, the same reps,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
you never break down your muscles, because muscle memory is real, and your body will get used to that weight, and then it's no longer a workout. It's like
Yeah.
you walked to the kitchen that day, right? So you have to challenge yourself. You have to break down your muscles. You have to fail at things in life to get better, to grow stronger. And
Hmm.
I saw that not just in transition careers, but even when I first started in my sales career, there was a ton of challenges, and they were tough.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
And I knew that I had to keep going because it was making me stronger. It was making me better. So
That's such a great outlook. And yeah, it all comes back to where we end up, comes back to our attitude, our mindset, our perspective, how we look at the situation, how we look at the challenge. Because if we will first acknowledge what it is we want, and then try, and then persevere, tell ourselves we can, and then keep going, that's how we become unstoppable. It's also a way to accept responsibility for ourselves, and accepting that responsibility for ourselves, not blaming somebody else if something's not working
mhm,
out, if we're not getting an opportunity, but taking that responsibility on as our own is true self-empowerment, because that's how we then learn to give ourselves what it is we need. So any
absolutely.
last advice, or maybe a healthy habit tip? You've shared a lot already.
Yeah.
So any last piece of advice that you would want to offer to folks out there who want to up their hustle and follow up game, maybe?
You know what? I think, I mean, a lot of what we talked about with just continuing to go one extra or whatever. I mean, my current manager talks about it too, one extra call. And I've heard that throughout my
Yeah.
whole life, one extra call, one extra. But I would say even in addition to that, because that's gonna be huge in terms of the hustle, work on communication. If I could say one game changer for everyone that I know that is successful in many different careers, is their ability to communicate with other people,
Hmm.
and communicate in a way that you're putting the other person first. You're because look, everybody wants to be heard. They want to be understood. They want to feel
Yes.
valued. And
Yes.
and you have to, if you put people in a position where they know that you're listening to them, that you understand them, that you value them, and that you're going to work to build that relationship with them, that's where trust comes in. That's where
Mhm.
you're going to get further no matter what you're doing, because there's really very few things you can do in this world. And I know we're in social media, and we were on a podcast right now. This, in the olden days,
Uh-huh.
we'd probably be sitting in the same room, right? And
Right.
it's so things, I mean, things have changed, but I would tell you one thing that hasn't changed: you still have to interact with other people. And if you can improve that, I don't,
Hmm.
it doesn't matter what you're pursuing. I think that's one of the biggest things that I think is a game changer for people that I've helped and I've worked with. And I know for myself, it's just continuing to work on myself, whether that's, reading, listening to good podcasts like this one,
Thank
continuing
you.
to, yeah, absolutely. Have a mentor in your life that you can bounce ideas off of. So you're continuing to work on yourself so that
Hmm.
you're better connector with other people. I think that's huge.
That is so great. Yeah, something I've been speaking on and coaching on and thinking a lot myself about lately is effective communication. Yeah, because we all
Mhm.
want to be heard, we all want to be understood, and that's the only way to really connect. And without that connection, we feel unhappy, we feel out of alignment, and that's of course what we're looking for to go what's needed to go further in business too. We to be successful in business, not just in our personal life, we got to connect with our customers, and they have to trust us. So excellent advice, Pat. Really great to have you. I'm going to pop your LinkedIn up here, and you're very inspirational. You've got a lot of positivity to share. If somebody
Thank
wants
you.
to connect with you or ask you a question, should they reach out on LinkedIn, or is there another
Yeah,
way that
absolutely.
folks can get in touch?
Yeah, absolutely. Because LinkedIn, the LinkedIn address I shared with you, that link I shared with you, that's probably the one I check the most, and definitely the messaging through there. It's like a more personalized version of email, so that'd be great. It's an easy
Okay.
way to get a hold of me.
All right, there you go. Well, don't be shy. If you have a question for Pat, connect with him. He's obviously a great pleasure and joy to talk with. So thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate everything that you shared and you taking the time.
Thank you for having me. It was really an honor, and yeah, I hope your podcast continues to reach people because I think it's fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And thank you to our listeners. Appreciate you guys as well. If you have a topic that you'd like me to have a guest speaker on or speak about myself, feel free to reach out, and we'll see you soon. And until next time, stay curious.